Hello, and welcome to Culture Conversations, the podcast where we explore the people side of work. I'm your host, Megan Robinson. For years, I've found myself deep in discussions about workplace engagement with industry experts. Now I get to share this wisdom with all leaders, new and experienced, on their journeys to build cultures that maximize potential. We spend so much of our lives at work. Let's make it a place where our teams can grow and succeed. Welcome to Culture Conversations. I'm Megan Robinson, and I am so excited that you're listening today because we have an incredible guest, Ryan Weiss. I've had the pleasure of working with him, collaborating with him, and he is such a fantastic leader, has so much wisdom to share, and constantly just blows my mind with the things that comes out of his mouth. But more specifically, Ryan has over 20 years of success in leading teams, programs, operations that truly drive business results and profitability, and I have seen it firsthand. His strong appreciation for diverse cultures was gained through extensive international work experience living in 3 different countries, leading global teams across more than 20 countries. But most important about Ryan is really his passion about engaging with business leaders who are interested in influencing the world in a positive way. And he truly takes that to heart with his own leadership, with his own goals. And it's been really amazing to watch his organization truly flourish under that guidance and under those visions and missions. So welcome today, Ryan. I'm so excited because right before this call, we were chatting a little bit about process and culture. And tell me a little bit more about yourself, especially as it affects to process, and what else should we know about you?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me on, Megan. This is an honor. It's great to be here. And yeah, so my background was very much focused on process. I got degrees in chemistry and finance. I am like a process geek. But as I started my career in the corporate world, I started to realize just how important it was to have the people element. And I think that's what you and I have sort of collaborated on over the past few years is looking at the world through these two somewhat different lenses, but seeing the importance of the intersection between the two, that process can influence culture in so many ways. And one of the things I found fascinating about living overseas and working, in a global environment is, going into these different places, understanding the history of why certain laws evolved, for example, in different countries, and where things come from in terms of process and people and perceptions. And that's where we came up with it. I came up with this idea of the word optics. So our system that we've created now over the past 7 years that I've been out on my own, left the corporate world, is called optics because it has 2 definitions. One of them is the study of light. So when we think about optics, we think about an optician, right? So I'm wearing my red glasses in honor of Megan today. But opticians or optometrists, right? Optics is the study of light and focus and clarity and all these technical things. But it has a second definition, which I find is really fascinating, which is the perception of people about a situation, or the perceptions of people, the optics of a situation. And so it's this alignment of people and process that really gets me excited and passionate within my own organization and helping other organizations to succeed and thrive. Yeah.
That's incredible. I love, thank you for wearing the red glasses. And I know we talk a lot about vision and how optics can really affect both sides of that on the light and that process piece, and what is something very technical while balancing that people side of the equation. So with that, I mean, because we're here at Culture Conversations, so I love to talk a little bit more about culture and how do you bring something that's so processed and sounds rigid and having that affect a culture that seems a little bit more nebulous.
Absolutely, and it's so critical to integrate into the culture. So I often say that people without process get frustrated. Process without people is wasted. The intersection of these two things is essential to the success of any organization. So, for example, there are some organizations that don't really have documented processes, that don't really have structure, and they're sort of very free flowing, and that could be the culture of your organization, that we just kind of do good things, right? But sometimes that causes frustration for customers. Sometimes that causes frustration for employees. So if your culture is sort of too free flowing, then that's one sort of extreme you might be on. On the other hand, there are organizations that have very structured processes, and everything has to follow every step, and sometimes there's a reason for that, but that's a very different culture for an organization to navigate. So I'd really say the on the one hand, having a free-flowing culture with no processes could be interesting for some companies, but it's hard to scale and it's hard to keep everybody happy. On the other hand, if you make it too rigid, then it could lead to other problems as well. So it's really, I think, a balance in culture, and how rigid your processes are. How do you navigate those things in the creative world, or in the in the chemical industry, right? For example, so in the chemical industry, you don't have as much creativity. You've got to have more structured processes for safety. In the marketing world, you need room for creativity, right? And so you can't have things quite so structured. So there's this balance that I think every organization needs to strike.
Do you think organizations are intentional in creating that balance, or do you think that it's more happenstance?
I think some maybe, right? So I think there could be examples like the marketing versus, explosives industry, for example. There's going to be differences in how they approach process and culture. But I think a lot of organizations, it's more happenstance, and the ability to be more intentional about it could really improve your culture by recognizing why you do things the way you do, and how you could enhance your culture by thinking about process in a different way. I think a lot of times it is happenstance, but there could be benefit from being more intentional.
What kind of processes really affect culture?
So that's a great question. I think there's a variety of different processes that can impact culture. I think the process of how you onboard employees, there's a lot of discussion about this sometimes. I've got a client, for example, where their human resources process is really, we went through and defined what their HR process is. And one of the things that the HR person had in their mind was, and then, we onboard the person, and then we have a 30-day and a 90-day check-in. And the managers in her organization said, no, we don't, right? And so I think sometimes these gaps in what we perceive our culture is, that we have this process, and then we show people how much we care by having this 90-day check-in, but people weren't actually following it. And that was enlightening to see a gap in process might be creating a gap in your culture that you may not even know exists. So I think HR onboarding processes can impact it. That might be an example. But your sales process can also really impact culture. The types of customers that you attract, and how you treat them, and what your process is for handling problems and things like that. So really, process in any way can impact culture in different respects.
So if you have, and I'm imagining a company that has the world's best processes, and does that mean they have the world's best culture then?
No, I don't think so at all, right? I don't think that just having rigid processes is what's critical for an organization. I think having good processes that people follow and engage and believe in is far more important than having the world's best processes. Because there have been a number of times in my career where I've looked at something and thought, if the process only flowed like this, then the results would be so much better. But then you look at the team, the people who are involved, and think, I'm not sure if their culture or if their mindset it is ready to change to do this process, or ready to believe in this process. So how do you find a good process that takes good people and makes the outcome really great? I think that's the key question that I like to try to figure out with teams is trying to do perfect in terms of process might alienate your team. It might alienate the people that are most important to engaging, and that's why culture is so important when you're navigating the people and process.
I think what's interesting about that is it's truly the leader's approach to process that starts to affect the culture positively or negatively at that, right? So if they're rigid on process and they're expecting that perfection, that's going to have that impact in a very serious way. If, to your point, they have no idea if the processes are even getting implemented, it's another complete aspect to it. So I'm kind of hearing that it maybe is more on the leader's approach, rigor, and commitment to process even.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that. I think that leaders need to lead their teams, right? Need to lead and set expectations around. I think that sometimes the fuzziness of leadership, right? It's like all about vision, but there's also expectations that need to come in, and you can't just lead to the future, but you also need to manage what's going on. And one of the other things I'll sort of add to that is cross-departmental, cross-functional processes are really, really important. And the system that we created is really helping organizations to look not just at their process inside of a department or inside of a role, but looking at processes across the business. So I often ask managers or leaders, and so do you have good processes? Do people follow them? And they'll say, yeah, this my department, the finance department, we have great processes, if only. And then there's like this pause, right? It's only if only this other department would do what they're supposed to do. If only our customer would do what they're supposed to do. If only, right? There's sort of this, many organizations, maybe most organizations, take this approach of siloed processes of making the role and the defining the specific tasks that a role or person needs to do in their process, but thinking about it in the context of what do other people need from me and what do I need from other people. When we think about it in that context, that's really what optics is all about, is this clarity that my process is not about me. It's about giving somebody else something, and it's about getting something from somebody else to give that other person what they need. Like it's all about people interactivity. And I think as organizations transform that mindset, it really can transform the culture as well, from being siloed and finger pointing at other departments to we're all in this together. Let's think about the customer journey. Let's think about how things work across departments. So
I love that. And I think that you took something such rigid with such rigidity as a process. And when you're thinking about it through this people lens, it's a game changer. And it's no longer an us versus them. It's no longer I'm a cog in a machine. And I think that's where you shift that mindset. And we didn't even talk about mindset, but it's a complete mindset shift in how you approach process. And not at all where I think anyone with your engineering background or right, anyone that's a typical process person is really thinking about it from that lens and in that role. So I am so grateful for that. And it just proves again why you create organizations that truly change. And you're able to look at it from such a more important and impactful place rather than how do we get efficiency out of the play. Efficiency comes, but not without harnessing these other elements.
that's right. Absolutely. Absolutely right.
Okay. Any other insights or perspectives on culture? Because I don't want to hit the process thing too hard, but
No, yeah, no, it was a great question, Megan. So, I mean, one of the things that I started to realize as my team started growing, so I left the corporate world where I was managing hundreds of people, and now have went back to solopreneurship, and now have a team again, having a global team. And as I started really exploring my own personal leadership and how I navigate that, the purpose of our organization and the purpose of where we're trying to go, the values that we have and the values that I want to portray to my team and ensure we're sort of building a vision around. One of them is that we make mistakes, we acknowledge them, we learn from them, and we adapt. And this is one of our core values that I like to really think about and talk about, because we are going, like, a lot of business owners don't want to think about, well, no, we don't want to make mistakes. We're not. I start with the basic premise that at some point, every one of us is going to make a mistake. At some point, our processes are going to fail. It might fail internally, it might fail a customer. And what we want to do is acknowledge it. We don't want to bury it. We want to acknowledge it. We want to learn from it, and we want to adapt. And another process that I would say is that we want to create more value than we extract, and we want to create more value not just for our customers or employees, but also our communities. And so having a process to engage my team in improving the the way that we operate in our communities enabled our team on the 4th of July to go up into the mountains of the Philippines and distribute these kits for children in the rural provinces, where we're helping the kids in those communities to get school supplies and be able to do the things that they need to do. So I think
love about that
culture in our organization, having some processes for our team to feel comfortable asking for the resources to impact their communities. When we first started rolling that out, my team they're like, I don't know what that means. Like, how do I ask for the resources? Am I comfortable asking for resources? So you've got to have those internal processes to build the culture that you want to create, that creates the results you want to create. It's not just about profit, but we can impact people in our communities. But if you just say that, the team didn't really jump on it. Once we started talking about the process for finding an opportunity in our communities to make an impact, then they said, you know what, we could do a team building event. We could go and do this. And that process started to evolve for asking for charitable money and going and doing those things. So I think that has to be built into your organization to really propel your culture. Does that make sense?
I love it. And it's a beautiful example, because I think what my next question, this is the doozy, because I already knew the story about that. And it's one of the things that I admire is that you do truly walk that talk, and you've created processes and systems that ensure that those values aren't just hanging on a wall somewhere, and that you're intentional with the processes that you create so that it does support and creates a culture that you want, whether it be about the values, whether it be about how you handle mistakes. There is a process for it, and that is what feeds the culture. So do you have a couple of examples that leaders could start implementing on? What could they implement processes around that would start to impact their culture?
Oh, that's a great question. So there's so many, but I'll try to distill it down to a couple of simple
Just
ones,
ideas.
because it's
Definitely contact Ryan if you want anything to do with updating your processes, if you need help documenting them, if you don't know where to start. Like, this is totally definitely talk to Ryan regarding
I think one of the things I love, one of the places I love starting with clients is thinking about your customer journey. Just think about, how does a customer become aware of us? How do they become a customer? What value do they get when they become a customer? What value do they start getting? How do we service them? How do we resolve issues for them? How do we invoice them? How do we retain them and continue creating value for them? When you ask sort of that series of questions, what you're doing is thinking about the process from your customer perspective. And then you start looking at your employees and thinking about, what role do my employees take in this, and where's that intersection between our customers and our employees? Because the frustration that your employees might feel oftentimes has to do with, well, I got this customer complaint and this department complained that I didn't do what I was supposed to. But if you start by thinking about the customer's journey and answering those questions I just outlined, then you can start thinking about, where do my employees fit into this? And how do we communicate between our departments and employees to support that customer experience? And as you start doing that, you're going to change the culture of, instead of having finger pointing between departments, you look at it and say, well, we want to service our customer. And if that becomes sort of a central theme, then that communication between departments can get so much better. And it's not because the customer is always right, but it's that it gives you a common focus for everybody. Instead of being independently focused, they become focused on a bigger goal. And I think that's a really good starting point for evolving culture in a proper way.
Well, I love that you brought in culture, and you brought in not just, again, and this is where you balance between the two. You went straight to the operations, truly the heart of the operations, and looking at that and building intentional processes around that then in turn play into culture, and looking at it through several different lenses that are really powerful. So you heard it first, where to start on your culture processes, how to start thinking about it, what it's going to impact. Oh my gosh, Ryan, you hit everything in like 2 seconds on that. I'm like, I still don't know where to start. Starting with the customer though, right? Customer flows into employees.
That's where I love to start.
I love it.
Absolutely.
Anything else before we wrap up here, Ryan, that you want to share?
I think I love connecting with people. So if anybody wants to reach out, they're welcome to reach me on LinkedIn. So Ryan C. Weiss, you'll be able to find me on LinkedIn. You can also check out our website, epsoptics.com. We've got a new book coming out in the near future, Q1 of next year. It's already in draft form, called Optics: Aligning Your People and Process to Accelerate Performance. So I'm really excited about the book. We just launched a podcast. So we have a lot of great things going on, but I'd love to connect with people. If they've got questions, welcome to reach me on LinkedIn or check out our website. So thanks for having me on, Megan. I really appreciate it. And hope we've created some value for your audience around culture and process, and how those two things that seem so different could be, related.
Yeah, brilliantly put, Ryan. I'm really hoping that people reach out to you, because this is something that especially some leaders that are not process oriented naturally really struggle with. And so if you are finding that you don't have the clarity around that you need to bring the intention with it, that you need some help and support. And honestly, when I'm working with organizations on building vision and where leaders struggle in that vision building process, oftentimes it is in this, how do I put a process? How do I put a plan together with my vision? And my first advice is find someone that's really great at it. Because they love, like, if you don't love to do this, you can find someone that loves to do this. And Ryan is most definitely that person. So thank you so much for joining me, Ryan. Thank you for the lovely conversation. And until next time, please keep listening to Culture Conversations, and definitely check out Ryan's podcast as well to understand some more leadership activities and opportunities for your organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Culture Conversations. I'm your host, Megan Robinson, founder of eLeader Experience, a professional leadership development company. Today, we shared actionable ideas to navigate the evolving workplace landscape, compete for talent, and build cultures that maximize potential. If you're looking to learn more about how to support your organization's leaders, you can learn more about our work at eleaderexperience.com. Now get out there and contribute positively to your organization's culture with your own conversations.